My wife said, "I don't need to cook, clean, or even sleep with you." So I showed her what life looks like when she was no longer my focus. She looked me dead in the eye and said she didn't have to cook, clean, or even sleep with me. That single sentence, delivered while her friend Chloe grinned on our couch, eating takeout I paid for, ended my marriage. Right there, in our living room, on a Wednesday night. My name is Daniel, I'm 32. And what I'm about to tell you is how a 7-year marriage can collapse in slow motion, even when you're doing everything you can to be a good partner. This wasn't some grand betrayal. It was about something far more insidious, a partner slowly stopping being a partner while I was still showing up every single day, doing all the work. It began so gradually, I barely noticed. Like watching paint dry, or a plant dying from neglect, except the plant was our relationship, and I was the only one watering it. Olivia and I met in 2016. One of those easy summer afternoons where everything feels possible. She was spontaneous, funny, always up for an adventure. For the first few years, we were solid. We got our dog, Bailey, a goofy golden retriever who was our kid before we ever talked about actual kids. We'd take road trips, try new restaurants, stay up late talking about her dreams. I genuinely felt like we were building something meaningful. I worked in IT consulting, Olivia in marketing. We both contributed, just in different ways. I handled most of the cooking because I enjoyed it. She'd do groceries. I took care of home repairs and car maintenance. She managed our social calendar. It felt balanced. It felt like teamwork. Like an actual partnership. But around year 5, things shifted. Olivia stopped asking about my day. Stopped planning weekend adventures. Stopped putting effort into anything that involved us as a couple. At first, I blamed work stress or just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. Everyone goes through phases, right? But this wasn't a phase. She'd come home, immediately glued to her phone, scrolling for hours, barely acknowledging my existence unless she needed something. Our apartment started getting messy because she'd stopped doing her share of the cleaning. Bailey started getting walked less frequently because she couldn't be bothered. And our intimate life went from regular and connected to practically non-existent. I tried talking to her, multiple times. Is something wrong? Are you unhappy? Depressed? She brushed me off with vague responses about being tired or stressed or needing space. Then Chloe entered the picture, and everything got exponentially worse. Chloe was Olivia's coworker, a recently divorced woman in her early 30s, full of opinions about relationships, none of them good. I'm not saying Chloe was the cause, but she was definitely the accelerant on a fire already smoldering. Suddenly, Olivia was parroting phrases about emotional labor and mental load, and how women don't owe their husbands anything. Look, I'm all for autonomy, but the way Chloe framed everything was so toxic, so one-sided. It was insane. Every conversation became about how men are incompetent, how women need to prioritize themselves and stop catering to male expectations. Olivia started spending 3 or 4 nights a week with Chloe, going to bars, attending these women's empowerment meetups that seemed more about complaining about partners than actual empowerment. The more time Olivia spent with Chloe, the less she contributed to our home, and the more she seemed to resent me for existing. I'd come home to a trashed apartment, dishes piled high, Bailey's food bowl empty, laundry overflowing. Olivia would be on the couch, scrolling, as if none of it was her responsibility. I'd ask her to take Bailey out since I had an evening call, and she'd sigh dramatically, like I'd asked her to climb Mount Everest. I'd suggest we cook dinner, and she'd say she ate with Chloe, or wasn't hungry, or I could just order something. Every single household task, every bit of emotional labor, every ounce of effort to maintain our relationship, fell entirely on me. And when I tried to address it, she'd hit me with phrases straight from Chloe's playbook about me being controlling or demanding. The breaking point was that Wednesday night. I got home around 7. Our apartment was a disaster. Olivia and Chloe were laughing at something on Chloe's phone, surrounded by empty takeout containers. Bailey whined by his empty bowl. Clothes were scattered. The kitchen was a wreck. I'd had the kind of day where you just want to come home to some basic order. I didn't even say anything confrontational. I just asked Olivia if she'd fed Bailey or started laundry. Chloe immediately jumped in with a condescending laugh. Sounds like you're talking to a maid. Olivia didn't defend me. She just sat there, nodding along, while Chloe ranted about how Olivia didn't sign up to be my servant, and I needed to manage my own expectations. I stayed calm. I said I wasn't asking for a servant, but we're married, we live together, and taking care of our dog and home is a shared responsibility. And that's when Olivia looked me dead in the eye and said it. I don't have to cook, clean, or even sleep with you. Those aren't requirements of marriage. You need to stop acting entitled to my time and energy. Chloe grinned like she'd won. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't in a marriage anymore. I was in a one-sided arrangement where I did everything and got treated like the bad guy for expecting basic reciprocity. That night, after Olivia told me she didn't have to do anything for me, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to take her completely at her word. To stop being the partner she'd already stopped being for me. I didn't announce it dramatically. I just quietly stopped doing every single thing I'd been doing to hold our household and our marriage together. The next morning, I woke up, got ready for work, and left. Without feeding Bailey. Without making coffee. Without tidying the living room. And I felt this strange sense of clarity wash over me. If Olivia genuinely believed she had no obligations to me as a spouse, then I had no obligations to her either. I was curious to see how long it would take for her to realize what she'd actually been taking for granted. The first few days were almost fascinating, in a completely depressing way. Bailey started whining more because his feeding schedule was messed up. The apartment descended into chaos faster than I expected. Dishes piled up. Trash overflowed because I stopped taking it out. Laundry sat in heaps because I stopped doing loads that included her clothes. Our bathroom sink started draining slowly, then stopped altogether. One of those annoying clogs I would have fixed in 10 minutes, but I just left it. Olivia texted me at work, asking if I could pick up groceries. I replied that I'd grab food for myself, but she'd need to handle her own shopping. She tried calling the landlord about the sink, then got frustrated when they said it wasn't their responsibility and she'd need to hire a plumber herself. Something she'd apparently never had to do because I'd always handled every home repair. I stopped cooking entirely, meal prepping only for myself. Olivia would come home expecting dinner, like she had for 7 years, and find me eating my prepared meals while she scrambled to figure out what to order or make. She couldn't cook beyond basic pasta, and even that she'd mess up half the time. I watched her try to make chicken one night. She didn't even know what temperature to set the oven to. She had to Google it, while Chloe texted supportive messages about how cooking is a patriarchal expectation. The apartment started smelling weird. I could see Olivia getting more stressed and overwhelmed, but I didn't step in. Why would I? She'd made it abundantly clear she didn't see household contribution as part of marriage. About 2 weeks into my experiment, Olivia tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in months. She came into the bedroom wearing lingerie, trying to be seductive. I looked at her and calmly reminded her that she'd said she didn't have to sleep with me, and that works both ways. I don't have to sleep with her either. The look on her face was somewhere between shock and genuine hurt, like she'd never considered her words could be applied in reverse. Like she assumed physical intimacy was something she controlled completely, to use as leverage or reward. I told her I wasn't interested in pity, affection, or transactional physical connection. That if she wanted an actual intimate relationship, she needed to show up as an actual partner first. Then I rolled over and went to sleep. She didn't try again after that, but I could tell it messed with her psychologically. The rejection hit different when it came from someone who'd always been available and willing. The financial separation was where things got really interesting and really ugly. I'd been covering probably 70% of our household expenses for years. Not by agreement, but because Olivia spent money carelessly, and I'd always quietly made up the difference. I opened a separate checking account, calculated exactly half of rent, utilities, and shared expenses, and told Olivia she needed to start contributing her actual fair share. She was shocked when she saw the numbers. She genuinely seemed to have no concept of how much I'd been subsidizing her lifestyle. All the dinners out with Chloe, the online shopping, the subscription services I'd been paying for while she spent her paycheck on whatever she wanted. I cancelled her access to my credit cards, removed her from my streaming accounts, stopped paying for her car insurance and phone bill. I told her she was an adult with a job and she could handle her own financial responsibilities. Olivia panicked hard when she realized she couldn't actually afford her current lifestyle on just her income. She started complaining that I was being cruel, petty, and financially abusive, throwing around terms she'd clearly picked up from Chloe without understanding what they meant. I pointed out that expecting your spouse to subsidize your life while contributing nothing in return is closer to financial mistreatment than asking someone to pay their fair share. She didn't have a response to that. She had to cut back on nights out with Chloe, cancel some subscription boxes, and actually look at her bank account and budget. She hated every second of it. Chloe kept telling her I was controlling and she should leave me. But Chloe also wasn't offering to help pay Olivia's bills. Funny how that works. Around week 3, Olivia completely switched tactics. She started trying to win me back through sudden niceness and effort. She'd try to cook dinner, and it would be a disaster. She'd attempt to clean, but only do a surface job. She'd suggest date nights like we were a normal couple, just going through a rough patch. I saw right through it. None of it addressed the actual issues. She wasn't trying to rebuild our partnership. She was just trying to get me back into my role of handling everything while she coasted. I told her point blank that she wasn't trying to fix us. She was trying to save her comfort. Trying to get back the personal assistant, ATM, and emotional support system she'd been taking for granted while giving nothing in return. The final straw came about a month into all this. I had lunch with my buddy, Julian, who'd gone through a divorce 2 years earlier. He told me about his lawyer, Sarah, how she'd helped him navigate everything cleanly. Something clicked. This marriage was already over. I was just proving a point that didn't need proving anymore. I made an appointment with Sarah for that Friday. I took a long lunch, sat in her office, and laid out the whole situation. She listened carefully, took notes, and then looked at me and asked if I was sure this was what I wanted. I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. Yes, I said. I'm done. There's nothing left to save here. Sarah drew up the initial paperwork, a separation agreement and petition for divorce. Division of assets was straightforward, no kids, no shared property. I picked up the documents on a Tuesday afternoon. That evening, I found Olivia on the couch, scrolling, as always. I handed her the manila envelope without ceremony. Told her she should probably read it. I watched her face go through about 5 different emotions as she pulled out the papers and realized what she was looking at. She asked if I was serious, if this was some manipulation tactic. I told her I'd never been more serious. I'd already crossed the point of no return. I was already emotionally detached from this marriage. I'd already started imagining what my life would look like on the other side of this. There was no going back. The week after I served Olivia with the divorce papers was absolutely wild. A complete emotional roller coaster that confirmed every reason why I'd made the right decision. She went through every stage of grief and manipulation in rapid succession. Crying and begging 1 minute, angry and accusatory the next. Then back to desperate promises about how she'd change, be better, fix this if I just gave her another chance. She called me at work multiple times a day until I had to block her number and tell her all communication needed to go through Sarah, my lawyer. She showed up at my office building once, trying to ambush me, causing a scene in the lobby. She sent long, rambling text messages at 2 in the morning about all the good times we'd had, and how I was throwing away 7 years over nothing. completely missing the point that those 7 years had been slowly dying for at least the last 2, and she'd been the one ending them. What really got to me was how Olivia kept insisting she'd change, that she finally understood what she'd done wrong. But here's the thing about promises made under pressure: they're not real change. They're just panic responses from someone losing something they took for granted. I told her through Sarah that maybe she would change. Maybe this whole experience would be a wake-up call that made her a better person. But that transformation wasn't going to happen with me, and I wasn't going to stick around to find out. I'd spent years trying to communicate what I needed. Years being patient and accommodating. She'd ignored all of it until the consequences became real. That's not love. That's just fear of losing convenience. The situation with Chloe imploded predictably about 2 weeks into the divorce process. Olivia apparently had a massive fight with her after Chloe kept pushing her to embrace single life instead of begging me to come back. Olivia finally snapped, telling Chloe her advice had ruined her marriage, that she'd destroyed something good because she'd been listening to someone bitter about their own failed relationship. Chloe fired back that Olivia had made her own choices and was just looking for someone to blame. And honestly, they were both right. Chloe had been a toxic influence, filling Olivia's head with one-sided anti-marriage propaganda. But Olivia had been a willing participant, choosing to adopt that mindset instead of working on her actual relationship. They stopped being friends after that. Olivia tried to use it as proof that she was making changes, cutting out bad influences. But it was too little, too late. I moved out of our apartment 6 weeks after serving the papers. I found a decent one-bedroom place that was smaller, but peaceful, and entirely mine. Bailey came with me, and that was one of the few things Olivia didn't fight me on. I think she knew she couldn't properly care for him, and that he deserved better. The day I loaded the moving truck, Olivia stood in the doorway crying, asking one more time if I was really doing this, if I really wanted to throw everything away. I looked at her and realized I didn't feel anger anymore. No resentment. Just this overwhelming sense of exhaustion and relief that it was almost over. I told her I wasn't throwing anything away because there was nothing left to throw away. She'd already dismantled our marriage piece by piece over the last 2 years. I was just finally acknowledging reality. The divorce was finalized 3 months after I first served her the papers, quick and relatively clean, since we didn't have major assets to fight over or kids caught in the middle. Sarah handled everything professionally. We split our savings account 50-50. I kept my car and retirement accounts. Olivia kept hers. We closed our joint credit card. I heard through mutual friends that Olivia started going to therapy after the divorce. Actually working on herself, examining the patterns that led to our marriage falling apart. Part of me was genuinely glad to hear that. I never wanted her to suffer, I just couldn't be the person she practiced growth on anymore. She'd taken 7 years of partnership and slowly turned it into a one-sided arrangement where I gave everything and got nothing back. No amount of therapy could rebuild the trust and respect that had been completely destroyed. My life now is quieter, but infinitely better. I come home to an apartment that stays clean because I'm the only one living in it. I cook meals I enjoy without expecting someone else to show up and benefit from my effort. I take Bailey on long walks without coordinating with anyone or picking up someone else's slack. I've started dating casually. Nothing serious yet, but I'm in no rush. Just enjoying conversations with women who actually contribute, reciprocate, and see partnership as a two-way street. Sometimes I think about those early years with Olivia, when things were good, and wonder if there was a specific moment where it all started going wrong. Some conversation or decision I missed. But mostly I've accepted that some people change in ways that make them incompatible with who you are. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for both of you is walk away. Olivia might become a better partner for someone else someday, after all this therapy and self-reflection, but that's not my responsibility anymore. And honestly, it's not my concern. I gave 7 years to someone who stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. The moment I stopped providing that resource, she realized what she'd lost. but by then, it was already gone. Some damage is permanent. Some words can't be taken back. And some marriages die long before anyone files the papers. And that's exactly what happened to us. What would you have done in my situation?